Welcome to Raw, and I'm your host, Demi Carpuzos. This is the place where we talk about all the things, where conversations are uncensored, unfiltered, real, and raw. So grab a cup of coffee and get cozy. You guys, I was totally shitting the bed for the past almost 2 weeks. I've been in this push-pull energy. So I launched this program called Live Out Loud. The first run has sold out. Super excited about that. And then I had all these other projects that I'm working on that I'm excited to do, like even recording this podcast. And yeah, this push-pull energy. So I was definitely in some resistance. I had no idea what was going on, but I finally got sick and tired of listening to my own stories. And I sat down, took my journal out, and at the very top of the page, I wrote, "What's holding you back from reaching your money goals?" And then I just allowed for it to all spill out, and spill out it did. And so things like not trusting that I can handle all the work and responsibility that comes with up-leveling my income. To tie in with that, I believed that in order to up-level my income would mean I would have to work harder and I'd have to do things I hate doing. And tied to that is, some days my energy levels are high and others not so much. So what would happen on those days? Not taking into account the fact that I'm a pretty disciplined mofo, and I've consistently, or almost consistently, which doesn't sound right either, but just roll with me on this, almost consistently have done things that, even during times that I haven't felt like doing them, minus the past 2 weeks or so. And of course, some other times. But you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, yeah, so there's that. And then tied to that was that by, having to work harder and do things that I hate, along with that would also come with all of a sudden having people rely on me, expecting from me, having to do things on their schedules or a schedule that I promised them. And I think, like a lot of people, I'm a free spirit and I like to do things when I want to do them. And commitment and I, not so good with that whole idea. So that was all rolled up into one big ball of bullshit. Then there was also the fact that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to deliver on what I said I was going to. But I think the threat or the fear of losing my time freedom is the big one. Another thing was that I equated up-level my income, meaning I'd have to put myself out there, which I still think I do. And so I remember how uncomfortable that always is. And I think on some level, I've been trying to avoid that. On another level, I also feel that I'm putting myself out there more. And what if it flops? And then everyone sees that it flops. And then my reputation is ruined. And P.S., I don't know what reputation I think I have, but whatever. And so if it flops and then people see that, anyone who was considering working with me or purchasing from me is going to think that I suck. And then my whole business is going to go down the tubes. Anyway, there was a whole bunch more, but that was the gist of it. And there it was, staring at me in black and white, challenging me. I was picturing 2 cars on a racetrack. They're at the starting line and they're revving their engines. One car represents my desires and the other car represents my fears. And it's, which one is going to win the race. But what we have to remember is that just because one car takes the lead right from the get-go doesn't mean it's going to stay in the lead the entire race. Through the course, your fears are going to take the lead, and then another time it'll be your desires, and it's a back and forth. And that's why it's so important that on the onset, you make the decision. So it's not a want, it's not just a desire, it's a decision. You want a more fit body, you decide to have one. You want more money, decide to have more. You want to travel more, decide. Change your living situation, decide. Having a loving relationship, decide. It's all based on a decision. And it's so interesting how we're provided these opportunities and these synchronistic events that happen in our lives to remind us of the lessons that, or reminders that we need to be given and reminded of I would say about a week ago or so, I was on one of my walks and I saw two women who were crouched in the bushes. I promise it's not a creepy story. And being the nosy person that I am, I inquired what they were doing, and it turns out that there was a stray kitten that they were trying to catch with no luck. But anyone who knows me knows that I'm super passionate about helping animals, helping all life forms actually, but in particular animals. And the next morning I went and I was armed with a can of wet food and went to the same spot, opened up the can, left the food there, and then returned later that day, saw that some of the food had been eaten, and I trashed the food that was left because I didn't want raccoons or coyotes or anything to go in the area and harm this kitten. But I made it a point every day to go back the same time in the morning and the same time in the afternoon to feed this kitten. And this kitten caught on. I was greeted, I think it was on the third day, I was greeted by seeing this kitten. And so I sat down, made no move, waited for it to finish eating, and collected the food, and off I went. So I did this for actually, I guess it's been longer than the 5 days. So I did this for a couple of days. This kitten started realizing that I wasn't a threat. Yesterday, I was able to fully pet him. And then today I went back with the carrier. I was able to get him and then put him in the carrier. So now he's in my bathroom because my other cat is having none of it. She does not want a little brother. But anyhow, so this reminded me of all the times that I've done this, because this isn't the first time I've captured a stray cat. The last house that I lived in, I was in an area where there were a lot of stray cats for some reason, and I made the decision that I was gonna do something about it. And I decided that I was going to catch them. I was gonna spay or neuter, depending on the sex, obviously. And then I was gonna release the feral cats, and then the ones that were strays or the ones that weren't as feral, I was going to rehome them. So I went out, I bought a humane trap, I loaded it up with towels and food, and then I placed it on my front porch. And lo and behold, I was super ecstatic that a lot of them were hungry enough to actually go into it quite readily. But there were two in particular that needed a lot more work. And so I set out to earn their trust the same way that I did with this kitten. And it took weeks of consistently feeding them in order to lower their guard enough in order to catch them. Almost, I'd say closer to a month, maybe a little bit more. And so I started off by opening the basement window, placing the food just outside the window, and then closing the window. And then I created a routine with that the same way I did with this kitten. So they knew to go to the window to be fed each morning and each afternoon. Eventually, I propped the window open, and then I put the food just inside the window. Again, I did this for another week and a bit, and I did this so that I was able then to lure them into the basement. Again, I promise it's not as creepy as it sounds. And so they would come into the basement. I wouldn't move a muscle, I would stand far enough away, and then they would watch me while they ate. It wasn't until I felt that they weren't as watchful of me that I decided to take it to the next level. So it was one cold winter day, we're talking about Canadian winter, where I went downstairs, I saw their faces peering at me through the window, and then I placed the dishes on the floor, opened the basement window, and then nonchalantly went upstairs. Meanwhile, my heart was racing because I knew what I was about to do. And with slippered feet, I didn't even want to wait to put on my shoes or anything in case I missed my opportunity and they heard me. So with slippered feet, I tiptoed through the snow, peeked around the corner, and saw them disappear inside the window. I ran over, closed the window, and I was standing there in the freezing cold, grinning from ear to ear, because all I wanted to do was get them out of the cold. And I didn't know what the next move was, because now that they're in my home doesn't necessarily mean I can put them into a carrier or the humane trap in order to take them to get them spayed and neutered. And I didn't know what I was going to do with these two cats. I had a dog. I wasn't sure how that whole dynamic was going to work. But anyhow, all I knew was that I was going to figure it out along the way. Going back to all these stories that I had, the same way that I approached and have always approached, these catching of cats and dogs and doing anything else actually for that matter, it's the fact that from the onset, I made the decision. I have accomplished my goals because I decided. That's all there was to it. It wasn't a want, it wasn't anything. I was like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll figure it out. Not once in my mind did I ever think that I'm not going to help these cats or any other goals that I've accomplished in my life. And so I put 100% of my focus on the task at hand. I never once doubted that I wasn't going to be able to do it. As I said before, I just made the decision, and then that was that. I created a plan, rough plan of what I was going to do next. And then I went about it with the focus and determination of a freaking ninja, guys. I never once thought that I wouldn't be able to catch the cats. It was just a matter of when I was going to catch the cats. And just to give you an idea, like even with this kitten, I'm leaving in 5 days for almost a month. I can't take this kitten with me, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing that I wasn't doing all that I could in order to help this little wee thing. I just knew that I was going to figure it out somehow, some way. And sure enough, I did. Within 2 days of posting, trying to find a home for this kitten, because I knew to do it before I caught the kitten, I was able to find a home for it. So a lovely woman, has agreed to take him in. But I wasn't even thinking about that. I just knew, okay, whatever, I'm going to catch him. That's my main objective right now, and then I'll figure it out as I go. And even when I've hit a hiccup, it's never deterred me from my objective. I've always focused on the step I needed to in that moment and trusted that I'd figure out the rest after. And it's because my why was bigger than anything else. And it really makes a huge difference when it's aligned with a core belief that you have. And on that note, I think I'm going to land this plane and wish you an amazing rest of the day. Thank you for tuning in. And if you are interested in learning more about Live Out Loud, which the next run will start, I believe, on September the 26th, you can head over to strategicalcoaching.com/live out loud, and you can get all the deets there. Thanks again. Take care.